Dr. J this. And so the question was, how was the devil able to convince so many angels to leave heaven after seeing God and being in heaven?
Mm, That's a good question, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to understand the working or the way that the spiritual world works.
Mm-hmm.
You're spirit before your flesh. You were created as a spiritual being. So now let's go back even before we were created. The Bible talks about God being a spirit. The Bible talks about angels being ministering spirits, right? The question here, in order to answer that question that Chris wanted to know, he has to understand what is a spirit. See, he says the devil, but when Satan was in heaven, his name was Lucifer, right? Lucifer. But understand that Lucifer wasn't a human. Lucifer was also a spirit. The question is, what is a spirit? If I was to ask 10,000 people what is a spirit, how many of them really could convey to you what is a spirit? Let me. A spirit is energy, right? I know Christians don't like to use that word, but I'll break it down in just a minute. A spirit is energy, it's moods, it's a thought, right? It's energy, mood, thought, or feeling. That's a spirit, right? Understand this: that spirits are persistent. If the way, let's go down to the earth before we go back up to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
The way that Satan was able to deceive Eve is because spirits are persistent. If a spirit wants to influence you, it does so by what? Talking.
Mm-hmm.
But a spirit is persistent. So, what did it do when it wanted to influence Eve? It talked to Eve. And him talking to Eve got her to do something that was outside the will of God. I'm still not coming through, so let me say it like this. I was talking about this in Bible study the other week. Okay, we I don't know what our audience is, so I hope I can make this PG-13. Let me say it like this. I had to use a different word in Bible study last week. I had to call it the Two Live Crew, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about being horny, right? If we're gonna be real, right? When you are out there and something hits you, you be like, man, I want something. You're horny. That's the spirit. I'm horny, and it keeps telling you, get it. You need something. You need something. A spirit is not fulfilled until it releases itself or it manifests itself. So then here it is. You keep saying that, or if you're single, you know what I'm saying. You single, you feel like you can hold off. You good. You don't need nobody. You know what I'm saying. But that thing keeps whispering in your ear, I'm horny. And eventually you be like, no, no, no. You be like, at first, you no, I'm good. But it keep telling you, I'm horny, I'm horny. And eventually you be like, yeah, I need some. I
Mm-hmm.
need some. But then when you do it based on who you do it with, sometimes you're like, oh man, whether you say it was worth it, you shouldn't have did it, whatever, it's now released itself. Why? Because it hit or it fulfilled itself on what it did. And that's the same thing with any other spirit, right? So Satan is a spirit. What
Mm-hmm.
do you think he did with the host of the angels? He started talking. He
Mm-hmm.
started talking. He's an influential spirit. He is a spirit that does have power. And
Mm-hmm.
this is how he was. This is the reason. Let's go back down to earth before we go back up to heaven. Why didn't he go to Adam first instead of Eve? Why did he go to Eve first?
Please enlighten me.
It's easy, right? Us male figures, we're looked at as position of power.
Mm-hmm.
Give sisters some credit here.
Mm-hmm.
Sisters are recognized as positions of influence. You and I both know, even with you being up on Capitol Hill, you being the man of the hour, commissioner, you've been around this state, you've been around the country, you've been in Washington, D.C., and you know just as well as I know, influence trumps power all the time. Why? Because influence can make power do what it wants to do. And so the enemy goes to Eve, which is the position of influence, because he understood if he went to power, he couldn't get what he wanted to go to power first. So he goes to influence, speaks to influence. He got influence to believe what he said. Influence goes to power and makes power fall as well. And this is what the enemy does. He's persistent. Spirits are persistent, and they'll always speak until they're fulfilled. And this is what he did in heaven. He's speaking to a host of the angels. It's not like he did not have power. He had a rank as well. He was one of the chief archangels, which means he had plenty of power. People try to negate that fact that, oh, the devil don't have, that's a lie. If he did not, he wouldn't have got a third of the host of heaven. And who knows what that number is? That can be millions or billions, to be honest with you. We call them fallen angels now, or demons, right? So him having influence and being persistent, and also them seeing some of his radiance and how brilliant he was, they easily fell for it, just like some of us fall for the okie doke down here. Oh man, oh you know what? They you know what? They just might be right. You know what? They might have it. You know, it's that old saying: if everybody's running to the bridge, why you running the opposite way? You know,
Yeah.
and that's how we get, right. A flock will get around an individual, and they can be dead wrong. But if the majority goes for it, it is. We believe because it's the majority. But look, I'd rather stand alone and believe that, hey, this is what God told me. I'm going to ride out like this. He was able to do so because he's not a fool. It was not like he was powerless. He had power, but he was also very influential. And he was able to talk them right out of heaven, just like some people down here are able to talk us right out of a blessing. Same way.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. That's almost similar, and I said it to a friend. That's almost similar to when you see a war in a different country. The head of the military talks to the soldiers. Oh, we don't have to go through this. Why are we listening to him? And then you have a coup, and then all of a sudden, you know, you had the soldiers try to overthrow the government in some countries.
Yes, sir. A mutiny, so to speak.
Hmm.
That's exactly what we had. So you have to understand what a spirit is. It's a mood, it's a thought, it's a feeling, it's an energy. And you know, I gave this illustration last week, even just talking about spirits. You can't see the wind blowing on a leaf. You can't see. But watch this. If I was like, you know what, Commissioner Towns, man, you got it going on, dude. You fly, you're a powerful dude. You make things happen. That changes your mood. That
Hmm.
kind of lifts you up. Why? Because Jesus said, these words that I speak, they are spirit and they are life. And so even our words, right? They're spirit. And so they have mood. They can change your mood. And even if I can say the right thing, sometimes you can get upset because you took it wrong, right? But here it is. We have to understand what spirit are. Words are spirits, and they are persistent. These words, sometimes I can say something to you, and it's gonna linger with you for the next week, for the next 2 weeks. And we have to be careful what we take in our ear gate, and we also have to be careful with the company that we keep as well.
Man, listen. So see how you just broke all of that down? That's how it was yesterday in the service. But God. Um,
I hope I said something that was clear. I know I gave a brief description of what it was, but man, we actually talked about spirits and things of the spirit, pneumatology, so to speak, last week in our Bible. Last couple of weeks, we've been dealing with things of the spirit last week. And so, in order to understand the devil, you have to understand what a spirit actually is. And even if you want to understand God, you have to understand what a spirit is. The Bible says that he is a spirit, and those that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. And so, knowing how the spirit world works will empower you to understand why some things happen the way that they do.
yeah, that's why I got to